My name is Steve Katz. I am a dentist and I love what I do. Unfortunately, in dental school, they don't teach us how to love what we're going to be doing during our career. They don't teach us how to be fulfilled. They don't teach us how to appreciate the opportunity that we have to help people change their lives. This has been very meaningful to me, coming to grips with this phenomenon. Recently, I have written a book. It was due to be out in time for today's seminar, but it will be out before the end of the month. There are order forms for the book in your handout, but what I want to impress upon you is in dentistry, our purpose should be not fixing teeth, but changing lives and making a difference in the lives of the people that we serve.
Dr. Katz and I, interestingly, have never worked in the same practice at the same time. We met about 5 years ago. We were introduced by a very good friend of mine who was also a dental assistant at the time. We had worked together for 11 years. She left the practice we were working in together, and she became a dental assistant for Dr. Katz. And she told me pretty much from the first day she started working there that I needed to meet her new boss, Dr. Katz, because in her words, she said, "You two are just alike. You say all the same things, you think all the same things." And I said, "Yeah, sure, one of these days would be nice. Maybe I'll catch up with him at a continuing education or something like that." And that didn't happen. However, I was starting to get a little coaching going on my own, helping a few doctors that were friends and helping some office managers that were friends of mine. And it was a big goal of mine to become a practice management consultant because I knew that there was so much to offer and I'm so passionate about it. At the same time, my good friend happened to overhear Dr. Katz saying that he was so sad that the Jets moved their training facility off of Long Island into New Jersey, so he sort of had a void in what he was doing, and he wanted to start some practice management consulting. So once she overheard that, she said, "Now you two have got to meet." And she arranged that meeting about 5 years ago, and the rest is history. So we pretty much share a brain. We finish each other's sentences usually, and we really love what we do. We're so excited to be here today. I'm very honored. This is my first time speaking here. So thrilled to have all of you in the audience. And our goal today is to give you some strategies that you can start to implement right away and things that you can take back that will have an immediate effect and you'll start to see some immediate reward. So again, thank you all for being here, and we're really excited to have you.
Take a note of our email address on this slide. If you send us an email, we will send you anything that you request that you've seen during our presentation. I will also send you some excerpts from the book, and we'll begin to send you the newsletter that we send out through the internet each month. I was very excited when I heard that the theme for this meeting was to be the Godfathers of dentistry, because the Godfather phenomenon really takes me home. A good portion of the movie was filmed on my block at the house you see in the slide.
Can we have that slide back, guys?
Do we have that slide? The house on the lower left is actually across the street from the house that I grew up in, and they filmed many of the scenes for the movie at that house. It was very exciting having the dressing trailers for Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Marlon Brando parked on our block. We got to meet them. It was a very exciting period. As a matter of fact, in the picture in the lower right, you can see a man playing a clarinet, and he was my music teacher in junior high school and high school. So this is really a nostalgia going back to a time that was very formative for me. It's also a delight being here with Woody. I have been a follower of his. He has been a mentor to me through his newsletters for 30 years. I began receiving the National Dental Newsletter, which is what preceded the Profitable Dentist newsletter, 30 years ago when I was a resident. And so it is such a privilege to be here, and I thank all of you for attending as well this afternoon. And it's just an honor to be able to join my mentor and become a mentor myself.
Dr. Katz and I have over 50 years of combined experience in the field, and The slide up there with that adorable puppy, your family doesn't get it. While you talk about teeth, your friends look at you like you're talking a foreign language, and even your dog looks at you funny. But we understand. We are both still full-time practicing. I'm a practice administrator. Dr. Katz is still a practicing dentist. We both work about 25, 30 hours a week. So we really understand the challenges and the pressures that all of you face. And we get it. We truly understand what you're dealing with. And hopefully today we can help you overcome some of those challenges that you're facing.
This is a little bit about my practice. My practice name is Smiles on Broadway. We're located on the South Shore of Long Island in New York. I have a very beautiful facility. I work for a wonderful group of women. It's more of a boutique type full service practice. And I genuinely look forward to going to work every single morning. It thrills me, it excites me, and I really feel that working with and working for the women who are in my office, I have a tremendous sense of purpose in what I do. But things weren't always so rosy for me in my life. You see, about a dozen years ago, I lost my practice completely to a series of life tragedies. I had a partner who unfortunately had not disclosed some prior dealings that he had, and he was starting to run into problems with the IRS about a year into our partnership. I had a very good practice. I had incorporated him into the practice to help me with some of the load, but it started to backfire, and it started to go down very badly. We were losing patients. We were losing interest in the practice. It was a dysfunctional time. And then I was home one night, on a Thursday night, and my fax machine went off. And I looked to see what the fax was, and the message was that I have decided to leave the practice. It was from my partner, but what was strange was it came from the office fax. So I got in my car, I ran to my office, only to find that half my equipment was gone, my computers were gone, and my charts were gone. So what do you do faced with that situation? I did the next day what any dentist among my circle of friends would have done. I went golfing. And unfortunately, as I was walking off a green on that golf day, I tripped and I fell, and I had a full tear of my rotator cuff. And I was told by the doctors later that day that I was going to be out of my practice 9 to 12 months, minimally. And this was a devastating period for me. Without the ability to try to recoup what I lost when my practice was taken out from under me, I didn't know what I was going to do. I tried to hire a resident from the hospital where I teach, but that really wasn't sufficient. And then I got the news that my ex-partner had filed for bankruptcy. And we had borrowed $750,000 to build this office and to get the equipment and to get the computers, and now I was going to be solely responsible for the $10,000 a month payments on that loan. So I had the loan, I couldn't work, and I had lost my practice. But fortunately, we were able to regroup. We thought well of what we were going to do, and I tried to start a comeback on the day after Labor Day in 2001. Well, history will tell you what happened a week later in New York when 9/11 occurred. And it was devastating for everyone in the New York area. It hit my practice especially hard. Several of my team members lost family members in that event, and we lost at least 16 patients. There's still a question mark about others. It was devastating. It certainly did not allow us to try to stage a recovery. But later that year, we decided to start getting busier. The feeling in the area changed, where we were able to start trying to rebuild the business. And then one night, I got a phone call, 2 o'clock in the morning, from the aunt of one of my team members. And what she told us was that Bianca was in a terrible accident. Bianca had been getting out of a cab in New York, and a drunk driver lost control of his car and hit her and pinned her up against the building. She lost her left leg completely to her hip, lost the use of both arms, and was in a coma for 6 months. And being in the state that we were as a practice, it was very difficult to try to regroup and feel what we could do for her. But we realized that in life, you are only given a certain number of opportunities to truly make a difference in the life of someone else. So we decided to dedicate the next 6 months of our practice to her benefit. And over those 6 months, Fortunately, she did come out of her coma. She started her recovery. We were able to purchase for her a computerized prosthetic limb, a hand-operated car, and we handed her $500,000 in cash to try to get her life going again. Thank you. And that was around the time that I met Woody, because Woody found out about this and had Bianca and I come to his program in Las Vegas in 2004, and we talked about that experience. And these are the types of things in our practices that we have to embrace, that we have to look for, and that we have to make our mission and our purpose to try to help others. Once we resolved after that point that we were going to rebuild our practice, I had long been a student of practice management. I had attended every lecture, every seminar. I had listened to every audio tape and read every book. And so doing things the way I had learned from all of these sources, we developed a vision. We surrounded ourselves with a great team. We started to implement systems that could help us operate in an efficient and profitable way. And this shows the growth of the practice in the years since that time. We went from what was before the tragedies, about a $900,000 practice. It went down to $200,000 a year, and last year we were able to reach $2.5 million.
So right now, as a whole, in our industry, we're facing a lot of pressures from the outside. We're facing a lot of pressures from dental insurance companies and from other sources. There's something that we all encounter every day, and that's commodities. So for example, if you want to buy some soda, some Coke or some Diet Coke, and you buy it in a wholesale club, or if you buy that same case or can of Coke or Diet Coke in, let's say, a little convenience store or boutique, the only thing that distinguishes that soda is the price. It's exactly the same. And the pressures that we're feeling right now from dental insurance companies and other outside sources is that the only thing that should distinguish us is our price. The pressures that they're putting on us is that every dental office and every dental service is exactly the same, when in fact that's really not true. It's America, thank goodness, and there are a lot of choices for patients and for our consumers, and we want to keep a distinction. We don't want the only thing that sets apart each dental practice in this room to be your price. We want to be recognized for things that are much greater than that and much more important than that, like service and the quality of service and the types of services and the relationships that we form with our patients. That's what we think we should be recognized for and distinguished by. So we want to say to all of you, hopefully you're frustrated by this, and I know I am. I've been very frustrated by it, especially over the last couple of years. Delta Dental, for example. Yeah,
Delta Dental, if the commoditization is not a threat to us, some of the things that Delta has done, in the fall they sent out 135,000 letters to participating dentists saying that they were not only going to control the fees of the services that they do give reimbursement for, but now they were going to start regulating the fees that we charge for services they do not even cover when we perform them, such as cosmetic procedures, etc. And then in March, it was in the ADA News that Delta was making a recommendation to the HR departments that have their policies that they were going to start implementing that there should only be one hygiene visit a year. So how does that make you feel? Does it make you angry? Does it make you feel that you really need to do something? Well, here's a suggestion of what we should do.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Get up and scream it.
Come on.
Let's go. That's it. Get up and scream it.
I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
That's it.
Okay.
Great. Take that passion with you when you get back to the office.
I enjoy speaking about dentistry. I also enjoy traveling. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to do some lecturing for some major dental companies, Henry Schein, Care Credit, iTero, Straumann Implants. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Europe and went through Israel and did some lecturing there. It was an exciting thing for my family because her family is from Israel. My daughter was doing a semester abroad there. And during our tour, we went to Jerusalem and we visited the Western Wall, which is the holiest spot in the world. And I saw the men and women who were spending their time praying to the wall. So I waited till the end of the day. It was a beautiful time to be there. And I saw two gentlemen walking away from the wall. And I went up to them and I said, "Excuse me, sirs, but would you mind answering a few questions?" And they said, "Sure." I said, "How often do you come here to pray?" And they looked at me and they said, "We come here every single day." And I said, "How long do you spend here when you do come?" And he said, "We spend the entire day from morning till night in prayer." And I said, "Well, could you tell me, that's quite a commitment, what is it that you pray for when you come here?" And one of the gentlemen looked at me and said, "Well, we pray for peace. We pray for unity and harmony. We pray that someday the Palestinians and the Israelis will be able to live together in peace and harmony throughout the Middle East." And I said, "Well, how is that working for you?" He said, "Some days it's like talking to a wall." And it reminds me of what's happening in many, many practices today, and that is too many dentists are relying on hope as a strategy. This is not a time to be complacent and to wait for conditions to change. This is absolutely a time where we need to be proactive and to decide what we need to do to become successful, and then to act on those things so that we start to move our practices in the right direction.
So Steve and I have been lecturing around the country for the last few years to great audiences like yourselves, and we have lots of private clients, individual clients that we work with on a month-to-month basis. And across the board, one of the top questions is, "I just need more fee-for-service patients. Can you help me get more fee-for-service new patients?" And we feel, and it's always interesting because the doctors and sometimes even the team, they always think that that's the magic bullet. If we just had more new fee-for-service patients, everything will be fine. But we find that that's really putting the cart before the horse, because 9 times out of 10, the offices that we encounter, once we start chatting with them a little bit, they really don't have the purpose and the intention and the systems that are required in that potential new patient phone call to turn that potential into a reality. So what we would like to do is really have all of you think about the systems that you're using now for your new patient phone call. We're going to speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes, and analyze it and say to yourselves, what is the purpose of that call? As you have that initial phone call, what would you like that to become? And take that back to your office and do that as an exercise and see if everyone on the team is on the same page. Most of the time, not everyone understands. And if someone that is not the person who normally answers the phone happens to answer it that day, like the dental assistant, then what? Everyone that ever touches the telephone when it rings needs to know the purpose of that call.
So why do some practices struggle? It's easy to come up with some of the obvious excuses that we're undercapitalized, that we have the wrong people doing things, that surprisingly among dentists there might be poor leadership, that there are bad market conditions and a struggling economy. But even with all of these things going on, there are still practices that are really making it and being successful and doing the things that are enriching and fulfilling to them and their patients and their teams. So what is it that is the difference? The difference does not lie in insurance or location. It lies with more of a decision to be successful, to do the things that are necessary to move ahead and become independent of some of the outside conditions that might be affecting us. Why do some practices succeed? Well, let's go back to the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, around 1900. The federal government enlisted Samuel Langley to develop the first airplane. They gave him $50,000. They commissioned him for this project, told him resources would be no problem. He himself was the chair of the Smithsonian Institute. He was a physics professor from Harvard. They gave him access to all the great minds in the country. And they gave him the promise of great riches and great fame. 1,000 miles away in Ohio, there were two uneducated brothers who owned a bicycle shop, who had a different dream. Not that they could make money and not that they would become famous, but they had the belief and the dream that they could change the way our lives functioned, the way we transported ourselves, the way products were transported, if we could somehow develop the ability to take items off the ground and take people off the ground and transport them in a quicker way. Well, history will tell you in December of 1903, it was the Wright brothers plane that took off from Kitty Hawk. On December 18th, Samuel Langley retired from his position with the government's program. He went on to fame in developing airplanes and being a pioneer in aeronautics, but he never acquired the fame and the fortune that he had expected. You see, he worked for a paycheck. The Wright brothers worked for a belief system and a dream. What is it that separates some of us from our peers? What is it that separates great companies like Apple from the companies that make products that are very similar? If we take the companies that are listed on the right side, these are all very successful technology companies that make wonderful products. And what they tell you is, we happen to make computers that are easy to use, beautifully designed, and user-friendly. But Apple had a very, very different approach. What Apple said is, we're going to change the status quo. We're going to think differently, and we're going to tell you how your lives will be improved, your lives will be enriched, you will enjoy our products. And by the way, we just happen to make computers and MP3 players and phones. Now would you like to buy one? And of course, you will realize that with that type of a belief system and those core values, they have become the leading technology company in the country.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream.
So was Martin Luther King the only black man who grew up in the times of the pre-civil rights movement, who had a difficult lifetime in growing up? Or was he the only one who developed such an amazing gift of the spoken word? He is not. There were many who fell under the same descriptions. The difference was, though, that most of them were speaking about what they were unhappy with and what they wanted to change. Whereas Martin Luther King got up and talked about what his dream was. He was a leader who inspired. And by taking the approach of talking about his dream and talking about his beliefs, he was able to cross demographic barriers. He was able to cross barriers of race, of religion, of political persuasion. He was able to gather 1 million people on the Mall in Washington who shared that dream with him. It was not the "I have a plan" speech. It was the "I have a dream" speech. And you see, our patients, they have dreams as well. They have dreams that we can make them look like the movie stars they see on TV, that we can change their lives and make them feel with better self-esteem, more pride, make them feel younger, make them feel more virile. These are the abilities that we have in our wonderful profession to impact on the people we serve. You see, patients are not coming us to treat teeth. They're coming to us so that we can change their lives. They're not coming to us for treatment. They're coming to us for results. And we have to keep that in mind as we speak to them, as we bring them to our offices, how we engage them in our offices, and we start to do the things that raise their perceived value of the services that we provide.
So we're going to give you guys a little homework assignment here. There are a lot of great books available today at this meeting, a bunch of them. I've collected a few myself. But there's another great read that we encourage all of you to order right away. This is something for the doctors and the team. It's a quick, easy read, but so impactful. It's so telling of what we go through in our dental practices. It applies to the relationships that we have and the personalities that we encounter in what we do, as well as it applies to everyday life. It's called The Energy Bus. It's by John Gordon. It's available on Amazon. Maybe some of you can download it onto your Kindles or your iPads and read it on your way home. It's really a great read. We have found that it has helped so many of our client offices just have a higher level of understanding about communication and about what people want and need from one another in their offices, that it's taken it to a whole new level. So, you know, you always hear that thing, are you on the bus or are you not on the bus? This book really puts that into perspective, and it makes a lot of sense once you read it. So we challenge all of you to go ahead and order that book up and have it a read.
Another popular question that we're asked when we visit with practices is, how do I motivate my team? I just don't understand why they don't get it, why they can't do the things that I expect of them. The problem is, doctors, we're asking the wrong question. The question we should be asking about is not how do we motivate our teams, but how do we give them things that they can become motivated from or about. You see, motivation is an internal phenomenon. It is not external. And so when we try to motivate people, we're really manipulating them. What we want to do is inspire them and create the desire for them to want to achieve in their own right. And that's motivation. So please start to think of the things that you understand that your team members find satisfying and provide more of it. And also be aware of the things that they find dissatisfying and try to limit those so that they don't have the negative pressures on them that detract from their desire to want to exceed and do well for us in our practices. You get the best effort from others not by lighting a fire beneath them, but by building that fire within. And as we make decisions during our day, let that be a guiding light to those decisions that we make, especially when they relate to our teams. As doctors, we are challenged with becoming leaders. And we talk about something of the leader's challenge. And that challenge is to have a vision for your practice and share it with your team, to inspire your team to become motivated, and to make sure at every opportunity you show appreciation to your team members. Robert Gates was a great statesman. And at a leadership conference I was very fortunate to attend, somebody asked him, Mr. Gates, and he had been the CIA director and Secretary of Defense under both a Republican and a Democratic administration. Somebody asked him, what makes a good leader? And his response was to make sure that you take good care of the people who are under you. In last month's issue of Dental Economics, there was a story that talked about making the better practice. And in it, it says, the evolving dental landscape requires all dentists, both new and established, to have greater knowledge about the business of dentistry. Today, dentists face new economic realities. They must develop appropriate CEO and leadership skills to operate a successful practice. On the plane ride here yesterday, I was reading the March issue of Fortune magazine, and Bill Clinton was on the cover. And they ranked the 50 most powerful leaders in the world. And Mr. Clinton became number 5. And what he said was, more people can be great leaders than they think they can, but they need a purpose greater than themselves. And again, we talk about making that purpose and belief system for your practices, excuse me, of making a difference in people's lives and doing the things that change them from things that they don't want to things that they do on an emotional level.
So one of the best ways to show appreciation, doctors to team, team to doctors, and all around, show the love, is to say please and thank you. And usually when we ask this question, teams will say, you know what, we think we do say please and thank you, we think we do show appreciation, but then when we really give them a few minutes to think about it, they acknowledge that on those really busy days, sometimes they don't say please and thank you. They don't say thank you for helping me so that we could get out on time. They don't say thank you for giving me a hand with that patient that was gagging and I couldn't take a good x-ray, whatever it may be. So what we've given you guys is a resource that you can use. It's in your handout. It's called the I Appreciate Yous. We've made it so that you can make a bunch of copies of them. And we want all of you to really think about things that you can write to one another when times get busy, to tell the people that you spend so much of your waking hours with, your teammates, how much you care and how much you appreciate everything they do for you. So doctors to team, team to doctors, and all around. Share that love, spread it around. I appreciate you. So we want all of you to start doing that right away. The next thing that we're going to talk about, and that's part of culture, we're going to talk about what gives a real healthy culture. And why is my clicker not working? Okay, you'll use yours. That's fine. Maya Angelou once said something. She said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way you make them feel. And there's nothing more powerful than that in what we do in dentistry, because we think sometimes that we're really on the mark with one another. We think that we're kind in the way that we speak and the way that we treat each other. But sometimes there are little things, behaviors that we have, or things that maybe we do when we're rushed, or the way we treat patients when it's one of those crazy days and we're all backed up and we forget to just do the things that make people feel special. And there's nothing more powerful than acknowledging that they're never going to forget that feeling that they had. They'll never forget it if it's the best thing they've ever felt, and they'll never forget it if it's the worst. So really think closely about that, the way you treat one another, and especially the way you treat your patients.
In the March issue of our newsletter, I wrote an article that was called No More Butt Dialing. And what it talks about is a story where someone is having an affair and they don't realize that they've butt dialed, and then their spouse hears what's going on one of these illicit dates. And unfortunately, we've seen too many times in dental practices that there's butt dialing going on in the hallways. You see, I was in a hygiene room recently at an office observing, and the staff knew I was there. And yet, in spite of that, 2 dental assistants were talking in the hallway about what a jerk the doctor was the day before, because he made them stay 15 minutes later to treat a patient who had an emergency and was in pain. Now, how does that make the patient feel who's sitting in the hygiene room who can hear that? You know, we have to be careful on our communication outside what we think the ear range of our patients are. They hear everything. They're in a heightened state of alertness when they're laying back in a somewhat fear-evoking environment. Their senses are much more acute, and they start to hear things that they would not normally. We have to make sure that everything they hear within the range of what they can is positive and not negative.
And with that in mind, if you're interested in receiving our newsletter, which Dr. Katz writes, and it's brilliant and so often very funny, just email us. Our contact information is in the handout if you want to be on our list. It's pretty entertaining and very useful, too, things that you guys can bring into the practice and use on a daily basis. So one of the things that absolutely affects the culture of your practice is gossip. And this is something that we analyze when we first start working with practices. It's not uncommon for there to be sort of a divide between the teams. Sometimes there's a little animosity between the front and the back, or between the hygienists and the assistants, or sometimes between the doctor and the team. This thing, it's an energy that can happen, and it often leads to team members kind of, whispering and complaining, or people love to call it venting. I'm just venting. No, you're not. You're gossiping about somebody who's not here right now. Nothing constructive will ever come out of that. So we like to eliminate gossip by creating a no gossip policy. And basically the way that it works is that no member of the team, including the doctor, can speak negatively about another member of the team unless that person is present. If they do, they will be sent home for the day without pay.
And that includes the doctor.
It only happens once. It only happens once, if at all. Most people, once they know that rule, and we actually have a little contract that everybody signs, it creates this heightened level of trust and security, because I now have an understanding that if I can't speak negatively about anyone without them being present, no one can speak negatively about me. So it's a wonderful thing. It really helps practices when our client offices go to hire new team members, as they do regularly because their practices have grown. They find that when they describe this no gossip policy to new candidates, people are fascinated by it. The best candidates will say, wow, I want to work in this practice because I've never been treated that way before. That's wonderful. No more cattiness, no more backstabbing. I love that. And again, it feeds into that energy that you want your patients to feel. First of all, it's great for us to be happy when we come into the office. We spend most of our moments that we're awake there. So why not be happy and feel good about it? But certainly we want our patients to know that they're in a place where people genuinely care about one another. How can we care about anyone else if we don't care enough about ourselves to be good to the people we work with every day? So it's that energy and that genuine culture. So things that are affected by the culture, and culture happens 2 ways, by the way. It either happens by accident or on purpose, and generally cultures that are created by accident are not that healthy. Effects of a positive culture would be when the doctor arrives early, or at least on time, every day, with a smile on his or her face, ready to start the day, ready to get going. When the team comes in and they have their game face on, they're prepared. It's business time. It's not time to complain about what went wrong yesterday, or what you watched on TV last night, or what happened with your kids when you got home. It's not time for that. There's an appropriate time for that. But when you come in, when you have this energy where we are all in this thing together, we're in it to win it, it's full throttle. Your patients will start to pick up on that energy and the synergy that you have, and you'll see case acceptance go way up. There is a direct correlation between a positive culture, a truly positive culture, and case acceptance, and that's a fact. So if you feel that you're not at the level you want to be with your culture, we can't stress it enough. Try to work on that. Try to figure out what it is that's missing and how you can get that train back on the tracks. It will impact everything you do.
There are 3 keys to dental practice success, and absolutely nothing takes priority higher than performing the highest quality of work. Also, providing the ultimate in customer service. And even practices that say we do all those things, there are things that you can do that go well beyond that in providing an environment and a caring atmosphere that your patients have never experienced before. The other third thing that contributes to it is practicing efficiently. You see, the practices that are losing patients are losing them to the practices that are able to do these 3 things well. And when you practice efficiently, you also practice profitably. One of the things that makes profitability much, much easier is to have impeccable systems that run everything that you do. See, systems are what run the practice, people run the systems. How many of you like to go to Starbucks for coffee? Okay. Do you ever notice who works in Starbucks? There's usually a high school senior, college freshman, 18-year-old taking your order, and then there is another 18-year-old making the beverages. They never speak to one another, and there are 82,000 permutations of Starbucks beverages. If you consider the lattes, the macchiatos, the skim, half skim, whole milk, half decaffeinated, full decaffeinated, 82,000 permutations. 2 18-year-olds never talk to one another, and they rarely make a mistake because they have an incredible system that involves 6 boxes on the side of their cups. And they code in those 6 boxes on the cup, and that's what gives them the system to which they are able to produce these beverages efficiently. It works certainly for McDonald's as well. Wherever you go in the world, McDonald's is just about the same. So let's take a scenario that we have 4 members of a dental team who go in on a Powerball ticket today for the weekend drawing. And we know that the hygienist knows everything about every patient who comes in, where each person has a sensitive spot, that they have to be really careful with the lower second molar, that they don't like the Cavitron used on their front teeth. But where is that information for her? It's in her head. And the administrative person in the practice, she knows the reasons why everybody makes their appointments at certain times and needs certain days, and she knows why people have certain patterns to their payments, and she knows what's going on in everybody's lives, and she knows about relationships in the practice. And where is all that information? It's in her head. And in most practices, if you ask the dental assistant, she knows what the doctor is thinking before he does. She knows where all the supplies are. She knows all about inventory. She knows what he's going to need and what he's going to use. And where is that information? It's in her head. But if these team members go out and they buy the Powerball ticket for this weekend and they win $94 million, which is the prize, do you think they're coming back on Monday morning? Maybe to pick up their things, but in most of our practices, I don't think they'll be returning. And when they leave, what leaves with them? All the systems that they have in their head that have not been transcribed and written down so that other people can run the systems, So it's important to document the systems and the job descriptions and how we go about doing things and how we turn on lights and suctions and compressors so that anyone coming in has the ability to help the practice run efficiently. I went through a period where 5 members of my team were all giving birth in the same month. It was 9 months after our holiday party, and though I don't take any credit for these, I do think I put them in a good mood back in December. But the bottom line is our practice was still able to run very efficiently during the last quarter of that year because we have a very, very defined manual for systems and operations for every single role in the office.
We have great strategies for developing job descriptions and a procedure and policy manual. If any of you are interested in how to do that effectively and more quickly, just reach out to us, call us, or send us an email, and we'll be happy to give you the steps that it takes to actually implement that. So there's something that we like to call, if I could have that slide back, there it is, okay, Suit Sat Gut. This is the #1 marketing tip that we're going to give you guys today. This is start out on time, stay on time, and get out on time. So it sounds silly, and I think a lot of practices really try hard to do this, but they're not quite executing it at the level that they would like to be. Right now, most people in today's world, including myself, feel that their time is something that's so valuable. My time, my calendar is booked out every minute of every day, as I'm sure most of yours are. If I lose an hour and a half sitting waiting for a professional appointment, whether it be a dentist or a doctor or whatever it may be, I can never get that time back. And to me, that's actually offensive. If someone steals an hour and a half of my time making me wait for them when I had a scheduled appointment, that makes me angry. And in today's world where people have access to Yelp and Google reviews and all these other things, the last thing you want to do is give people an opportunity to say something so negative about you on the World Wide Web. And most patients, potential patients, if they read a review like that about you running late all the time, they're going to take that to heart, and they will think twice before they call you if they have other choices. So start out on time, stay on time, and get out on time. It's also a great culture builder, because it's important for team. We all have lives, we have families, we have things going on, we have things that we like to do when we're not at work, and we would like to have a little respect about that. So if you're not doing that well, focus on it, make that a goal for the months to come. Part of the way that you can increase your ability to Suit Sat Gut is to use block scheduling. Many practices really schedule for a level of busyness. I've had so many scheduling coordinators say to me, oh, if there's one hole in that day, doctor is going to lose his or her mind. I just have to fill that up. They don't care what I put in there, but there better not be any holes. And we have these days where you get to this level of burnout where you're on a hamster wheel. You're going and going and going, and everybody's burnt out. There are days when you see 100 patients, it feels like. You're flipping that room all day, and everybody's working their tail off running around, and there was very little production or reward. And then you have other days where things are balanced, and it seems much more fulfilled when you have that type of schedule. So we want to really encourage all of you to engineer your days for success, and the best way to do that is through scheduling for production with block scheduling. Most softwares have the ability to do that now. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of how we block schedule, and please come up to me at the end if you want to know more about this. I can tell you exactly how to do it, or email us or call. So what I would like for you to do is envision a big glass jar, like a pickle jar or a mayonnaise jar, right? And imagine that your rocks are your high productive procedures, whatever you consider those to be, whether it's implant surgery, crowns, bridges, dentures, Invisalign, whatever it is. Your pebbles are your low production procedures, 1 or 2 composites, or maybe a simple extraction, or things of that nature, a post. Your sand is going to be your no production. That's going to be all of your try-ins, all of your inserts, impressions for other things that are not associated with production. So now, let's go through this exercise. You have this big glass jar, and I would like all of you to envision that you fill it up to the top with sand first. If you fill that jar up to the top with sand, can you fit any pebbles and rocks? Absolutely not, right? So dump the whole thing out. Now fill it up with the pebbles first. Fill it all the way up to the top with pebbles. If you've done that, and now you might be able to filter some sand in around the pebbles, but you won't fit any rocks. So the concept of block scheduling is to engineer where you want your rocks to go, so that every day we have spots assigned for rocks. Then we can filter our pebbles and sand in around those rocks, creating a day that's truly productive, that meets or exceeds our production goals, that engineers us for success, and creates that level of fulfillment and harmony that we all want in our practices. So again, if you have any other questions about that, do come up and ask me at the end, because I know it's a little complicated to grasp in 3 minutes.
What's distressing as we go around, and it's probably not the case among a group that's here, because you're certainly the more proactive members of our profession, but so many doctors and their teams have no idea of what's going on in their practice. The metrics that are involved to understand the business side of what is truly a business is foreign to them. They don't know the basics of what's important. Maybe they do around this time of year because it's tax season and they probably have just recently met with their accountant. But in general, they're oblivious. Of course, the usual things and the most aware things that we would have would be production, collection, accounts receivable, number of new patients, getting a little more esoteric, the overhead percentage, break-even point. Some statistics that we like to use when we're guiding a practice is the production per hour, because it's a lot easier to conceptualize something on a per hour basis than it is on a yearly basis, and also the extent of the third-party financing. We find that practices that are engaged with third-party financing from companies like Care Credit, generally if they're around 20%, they're being extremely productive. They show their best months when they are showing up to 35 or even 40% from third-party financing. It's also important to understand the trending within a practice. And when you look at a graph of a practice like the one on the screen now, it's easy to see the peaks and the valleys and to find excuses for the valleys. There were vacations, there was bad weather, there was sickness, there was a catastrophic event, and that's why our practice didn't do so well that month. But more important when we're looking at this type of a graph is looking at what's going on in the peaks. Because what the peaks show is what is the potential for the practice. What's concerning when you look at a graph like this is not what they were reaching in their peaks, but the fact that the peaks were not able to be reproduced in any sort of a consistent way. And what that indicates is that there's probably some sort of either a system breakdown or a failure of the systems, or maybe no systems at all. So that when you start to get busier and start to become more productive, the systems that you do have in place are inadequate to make it possible for you to accomplish that in an efficient and stressful way. So when you start to see a graph occurring like this, what you need to do is start to reevaluate your systems and understand what it is that contributed to the busyness and what is it that we were not able to keep doing as we went on to the following month and the month after that.
So it has been a challenging economy. It's still a challenging economy, and there are some myths. There are things that we've encountered practices doing over the last few years that are kind of frightening to us. Things like drastically trying to control expenses, trying to cut overhead in half, treatment planning less aggressively because suddenly doctors and team think that patients just don't want to hear it anymore. They don't have any money to spend, so we're not going to tell people what we really see. We're just going to sugarcoat everything until things get better. They have eliminated all of their external marketing. They're not spending any money on the things that they were doing before that they knew they were getting some result from. We've encountered a lot of practices, particularly in the Northeast, that had no level of insurance participation, that joined all kinds of PPOs, and that was a big mistake for them because they had a lot of patients in their practice that were on those PPOs, so now they've had to slash their fees in half for patients that they already had, and then they got a handful of new patients, so that didn't work. So this is all management by fear and worry, and hopefully you guys haven't had to resort to those types of strategies, but what we would like for you to focus on is increasing your productivity rather than focusing on things that aren't going to give you a good result. This is a great slide that Steve's going to do right now.
And this slide talks about the difference between trying to cut your overhead or trying to increase production. And this happens to be a very good practice. It's a $600,000 production with dental supply costs right on target at 6%, and that would take it at about $36,000 for the year. If the doctor turns to his highest paid team member and says, I want you to start cutting the costs of some of our dental supplies by 10%. So now you have somebody that's forced to go from catalog to catalog, trying to save 50 cents on cotton rolls. And the amount of effort it takes to try to do this on every single item in the inventory is tremendous. And what do you end up achieving by this tremendous effort? Well, if you save 10% on your supplies, that means now your supply cost is 5.4%. And that results in a big savings of $3,600. I can tell you emphatically that it does not take more effort than it did for that team member to save the $3,600 than it does for the practice in general to try to boost production by 5%. And on a $600,000 practice, if you're able to boost production by 5%, it results in increased revenue to the practice of $30,000. Which would you rather have? $30,000 additional revenue or $3,600 in savings? It's a no-brainer. I want you to put a circle around this slide in your workbook because it probably is the most important slide in our presentation. And it shows the importance of understanding on a per-hour basis how it is easier to make huge changes and huge benefits for your practice. And this happens to be a very good practice that we've used as the example. The doctor is producing $500 an hour, works a 32-hour work week, there's a 40-hour weeks of the year, and the hygienist is producing $150 an hour. Certainly a very solid practice. If you take a practice like this, and I'm going to preface this by saying, I am not saying doing dentistry that is not needed and required and is appropriate. I'm saying that if you start to look at your patients differently in the way that you treatment schedule and treatment plan and diagnose, this is easily achievable. If you add one additional resin a day for the doctor with these parameters, conservative fee of $200, it results in a $25 an hour increase over the course of that day. So that if you could do one additional resin in concurrence with another procedure, an adjacent tooth, an opposing tooth, the tooth next to it has some improper anatomy that may affect the contact. If you can do this, it will help you achieve a $40,000 increase in production over the course of the year. If you were to do one additional crown a day, or onlay, or inlay, and I strongly recommend using inlays and onlays for some of the class 2 restorations posteriorly, especially with the abilities to do CEREC and E4D and do one-day dentistry, then if you do one additional one of these procedures a day with a moderate fee of $1,000, that results in a $125 an hour increase over the course of the day. And if you could repeat that for the days throughout the year, it would add $200,000 production to a practice. It's a lot easier thinking of it this way than it is saying, I want you to increase your practice's production by $200,000. And the same works for you hygienists, that if you do one additional sealant a day, or one additional periapical a day, or one additional fluoride treatment, or desensitization procedure, then over the course of a year, that generates an additional $8,000. If you do one additional root planing a day, by understanding that if the patient has subgingival calculus, if they have isolated 5mm pockets, that it is no longer a prophy appointment, but it is a periodontal treatment appointment, then you can add $30,000 to the hygiene production over the course of the year. So start to think of this slide as a guide on how you can start to pump up the production of your practices. There are 3 ways to increase production. One is to increase the number of patients you treat. One is to increase the revenue generated by doing more procedures. And the other is to increase the charges that you have and the fees you charge for procedures. And it's easy to look at the numbers of a practice and give guidance when each of these things is appropriate. There's work involved in all 3. How many of you have seen an item like this? A pump. Probably more common down in this area than it is in the heart of New York, where I come from. But in any case, I have some friends who like to hike. And my friends Fred and Bob were hiking in the Southwest one time, and it was hot, and it was humid, and they were really having a hard time with it. And then they came upon a house that had a well out back. And Fred went running over to the well, and he started to pump away. And Bob said, wait a minute, Fred. You're not going to get anything that way. Let me take some water out of that bucket that's next to the pump, and let me just pour it in, because you got to prime the pump. You see, if you don't put something in, you won't get something out. It's sort of like our practices, isn't it? Where if you don't put in the vision, and you don't put in the resources, and you don't put in the training, and you don't put all the extra things in the marketing that make us successful, there's really nothing that we're going to get out of our practices. And Fred's pumping away, and he's starting to break a sweat, and he says, why am I doing this, Bob? Why don't I just take some of that water out of the bucket, and we can drink that for our thirst? And Bob says, Fred, that is not a good idea. Number one, that water is dirty and it's stale. That well is deep, and the water at the bottom is cool and crisp and tasty. And so it's an example of the more you put in, the better the rewards are going to be. And it's like in our practices, because when we have a case presentation that is extremely difficult and the patient finally accepts, or we have a case that's extremely difficult to perform and we finally hit that end result and the patient looks in the mirror and smiles, isn't that the most rewarding times that we have in dentistry? And then Fred's pumping away and he's getting really tired and he starts to slow down. And Bob says, oh no, Fred, don't slow down now. You know, if you slow down at this point, all that water that you've worked to try to get up to the top of the well, it's going to go right back down to the bottom, and you will have achieved nothing. What you have to do is keep pumping away until the water starts to flow out of the pump. And then you can ease up a little bit with a little easier pressure just to keep the water flowing. And that's just like in our practices. The harder we work in the beginning to prime the pump and to do the things that are necessary to show the enthusiasm for what it needs to do to be successful, then once we get to that point, it's much easier to keep that momentum growing in our practices as well. And don't hold off and wait for conditions to change or things to get better. You need to be proactive. Otherwise, all your efforts will have been naught and you'll be starting right back in the beginning again. So as you go back to your practices on Monday, what I want you to do is to think about the story of the pump and think about how can you possibly apply it to what goes on in your practices each and every day.
One of the things that you can do, one of the things that you can do when you get back is to really focus on developing a wow first impression. And that's great to do with your new patients, but we want you really to develop a wow impression for all of your existing patients. Don't forget about those people that have been loyal to us and that we've been seeing and enjoying for all of these years. So really get good at that first impression. Now, Dr. Katz and I, we do a lot of secret shopper calls, and occasionally we'll even do a secret shopper video, and we're going to play one of those for you now.
Doctor's office. Yeah. Today? I don't know. Hold on a second, okay? Yeah, thanks. You think? You think so? Hello? Yeah, I'm at work. Uh-huh. Yeah, I got somebody on hold. Yeah, can you hold on a second? Yeah, all right, hold on. I'll get right back to you. Hold on. Hello? No, sorry, I don't have anything today.
And that's what happens when you don't answer the phone well. So we want you guys, if you need help with the new patient phone call and how to answer those really tricky questions, like do you take my insurance and are you open on Sundays and all these other crazy questions that people ask when they want to become a new patient. If you need help with that, reach out to me because I love to work on those scripting issues. We have so many tools and resources that we're using. We have some really unique ideas and things that are working extremely well for all the practices that we work with. So do reach out if you need help. So let's assume that you have mastered the skill of the new patient phone call, and I hope a lot of you have done that already. Now they're going to show up. So we have to get really good at welcoming our guests. And there's a whole sort of laundry list of things that we want you guys to do. A lot of it's listed up there, and for time's sake, I'm not going to go too deeply into them. But again, if you need more info, please reach out. One of the really important things on here is the pre-appointment phone call to every new patient. So administrative team, what we would like for you to do is provide your doctors with a list the night before of the new patients that are coming in for the next day. And then, Dr. Katz, I'm going to let you share with them how you do the new patient phone call.
I don't know if the situation is for many of you, but in the New York area, there's a high incidence of patients making a first appointment and then not showing up. And that's extremely frustrating. And why is it that patients will not show up on a first visit? It's usually because they really don't have a relationship with the practice, or certainly with the doctor. And when they have this relationship, they are more likely to feel compelled to come in and complete or at least continue the relationship. So what I like to do is the night before a patient's first visit, I will call them, usually in my car on the way home, and I'll say, "Hi, Mrs. Jones, this is Dr. Katz. I always like to call guests before they come to our practice for the first time to welcome them and to introduce myself. And I'd like to know before you come in, are there any particular concerns that you have so that I can be even better prepared for your arrival?" And the reaction is usually, "Wow, I've never gotten a phone call like that." And we'll engage them in some conversation. They usually don't ask anything about concerns. They thank me for the phone call, and then they have a much better incidence of showing up. Even when they're not answering the phone, this is exactly the message that I will leave on their answering machines and their voicemails. When they come to our office, they say that they've never received a phone call like that. And it is the beginning of a relationship. And it is through these relationships that we start to develop believability, likability, and trust with our patients so that they become more motivated and more inspired, that will allow them to accept much, much more comprehensive treatment plans. Oh, sorry. No. There are 4 ways to grow your practice. You can increase your number of new patients, you can increase your capacity to do more dentistry, you can increase your number of high profit procedures, and extremely important, increase your acceptance rate. Now, wouldn't it be great if we all had the leverage of Marlon Brando in The Godfather?
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Unfortunately, we can't exhibit this type of force with our patients. But there are things that we can do to develop the relationship, to connect with them on an emotional level, to make them understand that we understand them, and that there's a greater partnership and teamwork between them and us in helping them come to the solutions and the desires and the beliefs and the dreams that they have when they come to our offices in the first place. See, case acceptance goes way up when you and your team connect with the patient on an emotional level. Stop trying to teach patients dentistry, because people make decisions about their dental treatment based on emotion, not on education.
Oh, sorry. You know, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I'm a rather brilliant surgeon. Perhaps I could help you with that hump.
What hump?
When Dr. Frankenstein made that suggestion to Marty Feldman, unfortunately, he was doing something that we see among a lot of dentists. We're trying to treat humps. We're trying to treat things that the patients do not have concern over or that they don't have an awareness of. And it's important for us to try to trigger the awareness and the concern that they have by tapping into a much more emotional connection with the patients. See, in dental school and in hygiene school, we're taught to be aware of the patient's chief complaint. And what is the complaint? It's usually a condition: a chipped tooth, a fractured tooth, decay, a toothache. Are our patients really concerned about these conditions? I will tell you that they really are not, that they really couldn't care less. But what they are concerned with is how do those conditions affect their lives? You see, we have restaurants in the New York area that on Thursday nights are singles nights, and men and women go there to try to meet friends, acquaintances, and maybe relationships. And when a woman is there and she's talking to a gentleman and he's staring at her teeth because she has discolored resins or maybe a diastema or some rotated teeth, how do you think that makes her feel? And when you have somebody who has a toothache and they find that it's distracting to them at work, they can't concentrate, and then they go home to try to help their child with their math homework, and their temper's a little bit shorter, and they end up getting into a battle with their child over homework because their tolerance is not that great. Or a gentleman who's retired and he's trying to play tennis with his friend, and every time he runs around the court, his denture is flopping around in his mouth, and he can't enjoy lunch with his friend. You see, these are the effects of the conditions. These are the emotional triggers. These are the true reasons why our patients are coming to us for care. Not to take care of the conditions, but to take care of the effects of the conditions. So our treatment then has to be geared towards solving the effects. The solution has to be for the emotional disability that's caused by the condition. So when we talk to a patient about restoring a tooth that's broken, what we're talking to them about is alleviating the potential that they could have a situation that interferes with their ability to work. And when we talk about something cosmetic, we're talking about the ability to raise somebody's self-esteem, to improve their ability to function in a social environment, to make them more successful as they're looking for jobs or in social situations. You know, when we talk to a woman who tells us that she's embarrassed because her grandson made fun of a missing tooth or some dark teeth, this is a real emotional trigger for her. And so if we can tap into that emotion and tell her, well, why don't we go to the treatment room now and not fix your teeth, but let's restore your self-esteem. And let's make it so that you can smile for your grandchildren and not feel embarrassed. Those are real intense emotional motivators for patients wanting to proceed with treatment. It's very important that we establish a relationship that shows that we're understanding. And a very valuable tool, it's been very powerful with some of the practices that we work with, is something that we call the permission statement. And here's the permission statement. When I finish my initial consultation with a patient on their first visit, and we're having our little chat, before we ever go to the treatment room, and sometimes I may use this when we've completed some of our treatment presentation, I will say, Mrs. Jones, as you can see in our practice, we are very relationship oriented. As part of that relationship, I want to ask your permission that I can be honest and truthful with what I'm telling you about the condition of your mouth and how I might recommend taking care of some of the situations that we see. However, I want to make sure that I give you permission to make all the decisions. You see, it's your mouth, Mrs. Jones, and I understand that there are situations going on in your life that may impact on what decisions you make. And I want you to understand that I respect that as well. And together, we are going to be team and we're going to be partners in this journey we take to solving some of the things that you discussed with me about being embarrassed and being ashamed. How does that sound, Mrs. Jones? And you should see the change in posture of a patient who now can relate to you in a much different way than they have ever related to with another professional. It is really a feeling of togetherness, of a feeling that they have found the right place, and that the level of care they are going to receive under your supervision and your guidance is going to be much different than what they've ever achieved before.
So we're going to touch on hygiene just very briefly. There are some phenomenal hygiene lectures here at this event, and I'm sure a lot of you have had an opportunity to see them. They're just terrific. We've seen a couple ourselves, so very impressive. But our top priority for every dental hygienist that we work with, the most important thing above scaling and reviewing health histories and taking x-rays and all of that stuff, the top priority is creating value. That should be every hygienist's #1 objective as they start a visit, to not use minimizing words. It's never just a cleaning. We want to use words that are much more powerful than that. Unfortunately, a lot of our offices in the Northeast, we had terrible weather this winter. It was really a killer. Some practices lost 5-6 days. I don't know if any of you have encountered that type of weather from where you come, but that coupled with the fact that people just seem to be a lot less reliable in general, the hygiene schedules were getting blown out all over the place. And when we start to work with hygienists to improve the level of perceived value of those hygiene visits, we start to see those cancellations and no-shows and last-minute changes, which are, that eats up so many resources when we have to re-engineer that schedule because we had all those last-minute changes. We see that really improve when we focus on increasing the perceived value and having patients understand that it's not just a cleaning. Try to remove that phrase from your terminology, from the things that you say. It's never just a cleaning, it's so much more than that. And hygienists, you do so much more than clean teeth, so remember that too. One other thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to value-added services and things that we should do because we want to make a difference in people's lives, I want to talk about oral cancer screening, and I'm going to try to keep my story short, but I will tell you that my dad is a stage 4 tonsil cancer survivor. He was diagnosed about 4.5 years ago with a little bigger than a golf ball, not quite the size of a tennis ball, cancerous tumor on his right tonsil. And he had some chemotherapy and radiation, and he had a radical dissection, and he had a feeding tube and a tracheostomy. And very sadly for me, my dad has not been a great dental patient his whole life, which has always been sort of a thorn in my side because I love dentistry, and my dad's one of those people that didn't really go unless he had a bad toothache. The really sad thing for me is that had a dentist or a dental hygienist looked in my dad's mouth, they would have found that tumor before he had to go through all the things that he went through. So thank goodness my dad is alive today, but it is a fact that he will die from bone, brain, or lung cancer. It's a fact. So we have that to deal with now. So just remember that the purpose of what we want all of you to take home is to make a difference in people's lives. We have the resources and the tools now with all of the oral cancer screening devices that are available. If you're not using them, it's a big disservice to your patients. Start. We don't care which one you pick. They're all really great. But educate yourselves about the risks. Educate yourselves about the fact that it's not just smokers and drinkers. It is so much more. So please put that on your action plan and take it back with you and start doing oral cancer screenings at the highest level that you can.
How many of you have intraoral cameras in your offices? How many of them use it on every single patient? Good. All of those who did not keep your hand up, I want you to make a pledge that on Monday you will start using it on every single patient. It is the most valuable tool we have in partnering with our patient in co-diagnosis to inspire them to seek dental treatment.
And also in insurance payment, I mean, if you're working in the world of insurance participation, intraoral photography will change your payments. It will absolutely improve the way that you get paid. So for a variety of reasons, some that are very patient-focused and some that are very focused on what benefits us, you have to do it. You must have it.
When patients see pictures like the ones on the screen there, they know that that's not right. And what they look at those pictures and saying is, can you take care of that? Can you change that for me? Because I don't want that in my mouth. The other use of a camera is sometimes to show them the things that are good that we see in their mouths. Maybe some successful treatment. Maybe just looking at a tooth that makes you happy.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
And also, I just want to remind everybody, speaking of being happy, Woody invited everyone to go at 4:45 today to Hammerheads for happy hour. So let's do it. We'll see you guys there. The retracted smile photo is something, again, show of hands, anybody taking the retracted smile photo on a regular basis? Oh, a couple of hands. Awesome. Okay. This is, again, coupled with the intraoral photo, one of the best things that you all can do to increase your case acceptance, increase your patient's level of understanding without trying to educate them about all the things we already know, which we will not teach them in a matter of minutes. This really allows them to become connected, to have a level of co-diagnosis, and to take ownership of the problem that's in their head. It's not our problem, it's their problem. So please, if you're not doing this, start doing it as soon as you get back. And there are so many great point-and-shoot cameras. You don't need to spend $2,000 on a fancy camera. With the technology that we have today as far as cameras go, you can do this probably with a camera you already own. So don't make excuses, just start doing it. And the periodontal progress report. This is also in your handout. The one that we've given you here has no header on it, and it is ready for you to customize. If you would like for us to send this to you in an electronic format so that you can customize it more easily, please send us an email. We will send it. So car dealers, service departments at car dealerships have done a wonderful job about increasing our perceived value. So you can go to a Jiffy Lube or a Quick Stop or a place like that, and you can get an oil change for like $29. However, when you go to your car dealer, they'll usually charge you like $65. And what the car dealers have done that is so interesting, and we need to pick up on it, the periodontal progress report will help you with this, is they will itemize every single thing they did. They're really good at increasing the value of their service by listing all of the value-added services that they did for you. So on that periodontal progress report, you're really partnering with the patient. You're going over with them all of those things that you've done for them every single time that you don't get any credit for and that they don't really understand. And it's also giving them an opportunity to take that home and review it. They clearly understand what happened today, what's happening next time. And there's a whole administrative component to this form that I'm not going to go into much today, but please, if you're interested, come up at the end and I'll go over that with you. It's a great last-minute cancellation tool. The treatment presentation, if you do not have a consult room, we really encourage all of you to figure out a way, maybe if it's the doctor's private office, or if there's a little nook and cranny area in your administrative area that you can turn into a consult room. We do find that patients really hate having treatment presented to them at the chair side unless it's a true dental emergency. They are very uncomfortable in that dental chair, and most of the time we kind of sound like the Charlie Brown teacher. They're not really listening to us. It's like, want, 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 want. They're just thinking, oh my goodness, get me out of this chair. I don't want to be here anymore. So if you can present in a consult room, your case acceptance will go way up. Your patients will have a different level of the way they feel you respect them. So that's very important.
Everything we do within our practices should be geared towards increasing the perceived value, of giving a level of service that patients have never experienced before, of making them know how much we care, much more so than having them care how much we know. Certainly we want to make them feel that what they are, because of the level of care they're receiving, that they're going to want to refer others, that they're going to want to come back to continue with their treatment, that they're grateful for the service that they're getting. As we increase the level of perceived value, we lower in their minds the level of perceived cost, because people see value. As we ask patients if their main concern is the cost of treatment, many of them will state emphatically that it is more the concern for value and that they're getting their money's worth. So whatever we can do to raise the perceived value will, in the patient's mind, lower the perceived cost. You can't always accomplish that, though.
Yes, I hope so. Tooth extraction. One tooth, but I need to ask you for a quote first. I need to know your lowest price. One tooth to be taken out, lowest price. Okay, well, just assume it's an easy one. Assume the cheapest one. Lowest price is the main thing here. 1,600. Okay, does that include a nurse assisting you? How about if we leave out the nurse and just tag it in on the end of someone else's appointment? How much would it be then? 1,200. That's still a lot more than I thought it would be. Why so much? An hour of your time. Okay, well, I understand that because you gently remove the tooth, it takes a long time to, but price is the important thing here. Don't worry about gently removing the tooth or anything. How much for a quick 10-minute get it out extraction? 900, still too high. Does that include pre-injections, those little jabs you give that just numb up the gum before the main injection? Okay, what if you leave those out? Well, of course, yeah, I understand it will be much more painful, but low price is more important. What's your lowest price without the pre-injections? 700. Well, yeah, that's obviously better, but I may have mentioned low price is the most important factor here. So is there a way you can get a bit more off the price? Half dosage of the main injection, what will that bring it down to? total agony, but 500. Well, okay, look, I really want the lowest price deal here. What if you do it with no injections at all? Yeah, I know it will be absolutely agonisingly, excruciatingly painful, but I really mean it when I say lowest cost is the priority here. Okay, I'll hold. Can't believe he's never done it before with no injection. Hello? Yes, I'm still here. 200. Okay, that's great. That's a deal. Right. Can I book the wife in then, please?
So not everyone appreciates what we do.
Mm-hmm. See, unfortunately, sometimes when we hear patients having questions or voicing what we view as objections, we don't embrace them as the opportunities that they are. Anytime a patient asks a question after we've discussed treatment with them, it shows that they have some level of interest. And the most common objections are the 5 that are listed on the slide, which are cost, fear, time, sense of urgency, and trust. And there are specific ways of dealing with each of these. We're a little time constrained right now. If any of you would like to discuss with us about how to deal with each of these, please call the number on the handout, and we'd be happy to engage you on the phone to go over that with you as part of the value-added service of our presentation.
One of the biggest problems that practices face with case acceptance is the cost question. And we hear very often from hygienists and doctors that we had the case sold in the back and they lost it at the front, right? Has anybody encountered that, where the patient was yes, yes, yes in the back, and then they were brought up to the front and they said, I don't have my calendar, or I'm going to have to call you? That's usually a money issue. And one of the things that we love about third-party financing and Care Credit is that allows you to take all of that awkward money conversation out of it. I love being able to say to patients, once I've had them approved for Care Credit, you and I don't have to talk about money anymore. You can just come anytime you want. There's no more discussion about money. We're going to keep all of your appointments right on track, and that conversation's over. That is such a relief for them. They feel so much pressure when we make these crazy financial arrangements and they know they have to bring us a couple of $1,000s, and inevitably they don't have it. So what do? They call and they cancel on us, and then we're doubly disappointed because we missed a productive appointment and we didn't get paid. So it's horrible when that happens. One of the other things I love about Care Credit is their new slogan that they adopted a couple of years ago, which says, the care you want. Remember, people hate to spend money on things they need. They love to spend money on things they want. Our job is to change our practices from needs-based to wants-based. When you really master that, again, you see case acceptance skyrocket, and your patients appreciate you.
To change the success of your practice, you need to change the way that you practice. And that means, to some extent, some experimentation, some trial and error. There are some great men who've done great things, and they were not successful the first time they tried. Colonel Sanders took his recipe for fried chicken to 100 restaurants before he decided to open up his own. Steve Jobs was legendary in the formation of the prominence of Apple, yet the first time around when he worked for the company, he was fired. Fellow on the lower right, Fred Smith, was a student at the Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania, and as his thesis project, he developed the idea of a hub-based delivery system where anything could be delivered anywhere in the country overnight. He failed that project. They told him it would never work, so he left the school and founded Federal Express. And Thomas Edison, perhaps the greatest inventor of the last 2 centuries, once said, I have not failed 10,000 times, I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 10,000 ways will not work. When I have eliminated the ways that will not work, I will find the way that will. And that's the way we have to go into adopting change in our practices. Change is difficult. It's uncomfortable. But as we make changes, we will start to see our practices grow.
Beep, beep, bye, bye, fo, fo, fo. I smell smoke in the auditorium.
You all can dance. You know you want to. There we go. We have a couple dancers.
He's a clown, that Charlie Brown. He's gonna get gone.
Yes, I'm not a very rhythmic dancer.
Why is everybody always picking on me?
Okay, so Charles Schultz, one of the greatest philosophers of our lifetime, right? If I were to ask you who were the last 3 Heisman Trophy winners, can you answer? Okay, the last 3 Nobel Prize winners. Nope, okay. Last 3 Academy Award winners? Can any of you answer those questions? Probably not.
These are people who've accomplished great things in their respective fields, yet we can't think of who they are. You see, in time, awards tarnish, certificates fade, and applause dies out. But if we were to switch these questions, and I would ask you to name 3 teachers when you were in grade school who helped you get through difficult times when you were students. Or if I asked you to name 3 friends who helped you through a difficult time as you've been an adult. Or maybe just 3 people who you enjoy spending time with. Would that be easier? Can each of you come up with names under that situation? Well, the reason that you can have these names come up is because these are the people who show that they care. And I want you to develop a very caring feeling and a caring culture in your practices. Just going to take you back 1.5 years, 2 years in my practice. We had a patient who had lost her son to a long bout with cancer. During that time, he was her only son, and he had a rare form of cancer that no insurance would pay for the experimental treatment. So she exhausted her life savings, she refinanced her house, but he passed away. And then only a couple of months after he passed away, Sandy hit her home and took it away with it. And she lost her cars as well. She had lost virtually everything. And then only a couple of weeks after she lost her home and her cars, her husband was diagnosed with cancer. And so we understand that you only have a certain number of opportunities in your life to truly make that difference in somebody else's life. So what we offered to do as a practice is we decided that we were going to pay her rent for a while until she could find someplace else to stay. And really, she had let her dental health go. She rarely came in except for an emergency. We didn't have the opportunity to treat her, and we told her that we were going to do a full mouth reconstruction for her at no charge. And we did this. It took almost a year to accomplish. If you put a value on it, it was probably close to $70,000 or $80,000 worth of dentistry. I can tell you that I have patients who pay a load of money for extensive dental treatment in my practice, but there wasn't a single appointment that I would look forward to more than when she came in because of the impact it would have on her life. And when we finished that treatment that day, we were all crying in the treatment room because the first thing she said she wanted to do was look up and smile at her son. And that's really what the rewards are and what the things that we're capable of doing in our practices and the differences that we can make in people's lives. And there's one individual who, if we could have that picture up, thank you. Mitch Cutler was my best friend for 30 years. He was also my Henry Schein sales representative. And it's not rare that you develop that kind of a relationship based from that connection. But he also went through a 6-year battle with bone cancer. And despite that, he showed people how much he cared. Whenever he walked into a room during that period that he was in his fight, there was nobody in that room who had a bigger smile and who made it feel like they were going to be able to help you and do something for you. And then in his final days, he lived about 2 hours from my home, and I would try to drive up and see him a couple times a week when he was in the hospice in his home. And he called me one day and he said, "Steve, I'd like you to do me a favor. And I would like you to write my eulogy because I've scheduled my celebration of life service, and I'd like you to be the one that talks about me." And so I said, "Mitch, this is heavy. I have to come up to your house and we have to talk about this." And I went up there and I said, "Mitch, what is it that you'd like me to say?" And he said, "Well, I just want you to tell me how I affected you. What are the things that I did for you that you're going to remember about me?" And I left his house and I started driving home and I stopped to get lunch and I had my laptop with me, and all of a sudden I started pecking away at my keys, and in less than an hour I had this eulogy for him. So I went back to his house, I came in the back door, he was sleeping on his bed, so I sat there and I waited till he woke up. And he woke up and I said, "Mitch, I have it, I wrote it. Here's my laptop. Why don't you read it? He goes, no, Steve, I want you to read it to me. And it was the greatest lesson I have had in my life, what he taught me in that exercise. Because he taught me that too often in life, we wait way too long to show appreciation to the people who care for us and who mean something to us. And we should take that to heart each and every day and make sure that we show appreciation and make sure that we care. So as you all leave here from Destin after these wonderful couple of days, I want you to make sure that you're hugging your spouses, hugging your boyfriends and girlfriends and your significant others. Make sure you show extra love to your children. And when you get back to the offices, if they're not here with you, show real appreciation to the team members who help to make you successful doctors and to the team members who are affected by how each of you work cooperatively with the rest of your team. Because that's really what it's all about. That's why we came into dentistry in the first place. And always remember, you can get anything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Thank you for being such a wonderful